Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
I have the privilege of introducing a wonderful woman to all of you this morning. Amber, I think I met you maybe like a little over 6 years ago, actually, at our women's Bible study at the building on Northwest First. And she's been a gift to my life. She has been a gift that's continued to unfold. And this woman is a truth teller. And this woman is not scared to do hard things. And this woman is not scared to go first. And there's been time and time again where I've just seen her wrestle and work through and run hard after God because she wants him. She wants more of him. And this morning she's bringing truth, and maybe not the easiest word, but she's willing to speak it out because God's asked her to. And I know that she is a woman that will obey. I've seen her do it, and I know she's going to do it again, and she's doing it this morning. So I know many of you know Amber, and this is true about her, but for those of you that don't, I want to say, you can trust this woman. You can trust this woman. You can follow this woman. So this morning that you would open your heart and receive what she has to say, because she's speaking on behalf of God, and he has something for us this morning. So I want to pray for you. God, thank you for the gift of Amber to my life and to so many in this room. And I pray this morning as she runs to you, God, that you would pour out your spirit on her and in front of her, and that every word that comes out of her mouth, Lord, would be straight from your heart, straight from your word, Lord, that it would pierce the places in us that need your truth. Lord, we need you. We need you, God. Thank you that you're here with us. Thank you that you're using Amber. Thank you for her yes. Thank you for her obedience. Just want to bless her in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Good morning. I am a wreck. Prepare yourselves for a lot of high-pitched talking in the midst of crying. My name is Amber Kinalikin, and I have a husband. We've been married almost 10 years, and I have a 6-year-old son, Sawyer, and a 3.5-year-old daughter, Jane, and we leave in 14 days to pick up our son, Oliver, and I brought a picture. Maybe. That's my boy. We leave in 14 days. So a lot of this emotion is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to China in 14 days, and then we're going to be a family of 5, and I'm going to have a 10-month-old, and holy smokes. I'm hormonal. I mean, it's like there's just a lot. The cards are stacked. And what the Lord has asked me to share this morning is not something I like to talk about. It's not complete yet. It's getting there. And I know he's begun a good work in me, and I know he's going to be faithful to complete it. And so I'm declaring this morning he's going to complete it. But it's not done yet. And so I feel like I'm just going to expose some things in my heart this morning. And so my prayer is that as I'm kind of laying it all out there, all my junk and crud, that you'll feel safe to do it too. That as I'm sharing, as we're looking at Jesus, as you're hearing little bits about my story, that you would feel that it's a safe place to kind of go there in your own heart. So here we go. I thought, this picture of Oliver would be like the perfect segue to talk about like adoption, right? Because that's kind of all I talk about these days. Sorry, friends. I thought, okay, Lord, when Tiffany invited me to pray about teaching, I thought, I'll talk about adoption. I heart Jesus because he was adopted or because he adopted me. And that feels easy. That feels like something I know. I'd love to talk about it. And so as I was praying and asking the Lord, like, what do you want me to talk about, God? I love you for so many reasons. Like, that's kind of a hard, I heart Jesus because there's so many reasons. And very quickly, I heard the Lord say, I want you to learn to love Jesus because of how he handles anger. I thought, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about anger because I like my anger. I don't want to let it go. So I thought, okay, Lord, we'll negotiate. I'll talk about anger, but I'm going to talk about Jesus being angry. Because then I can just funnel my anger to like something righteous and be okay, right? So that's what I'm going to study, Lord. I'm going to study places where Jesus gets angry, and then I'll just do that with my anger. And the Lord he's got to think I'm funny. I don't know. He totally humors me. He's like, all right, let's do that. So that's where I started in preparing. I said, okay, let's look at 3 places, because that feels like when you share something, 3 feels like a good number. We'll look at 3 places where Jesus gets angry in the New Testament, and then we'll talk about that, and then we'll do that. We'll just get angry together. Because I don't want to get, right? I don't want to get rid of it. I like this. There's something in this. It's like toxic, you guys. I don't want to get rid of it, though. It's mine. And so the Lord humored me, and we studied, and he taught me, and we looked, and we read. And then real quickly, he brought me over to places where Jesus doesn't get angry. And I thought, I don't want to read this. And that's where he really began to wreck me. Looking at these pieces of Jesus's life, specifically his betrayal, where I'm reading this story and I'm like, punch him in the face, Jesus. And he doesn't. And it began to wreck me. So I'm going to invite you into that with me. I just want to look at Jesus this morning because I don't know. I'm not confident yet in this. It's still happening. And so I just want to look at Jesus this morning. So let's do that. So first, let's look at where he gets angry, because that feels like the easier part. So we'll start there. So, and I will say this. As I'm studying Jesus getting angry, I am so convicted. The things he gets angry about, you guys, so convicting. So, Jesus, speak to our hearts right now. Okay, let's look at Matthew 21:18. We're going to kind of skip all over the Gospels because it's so fun to see how the different disciples saw what was happening and wrote it down, So this was my favorite write down of this. Okay, Matthew 21:18. Okay, so it says, we'll just read it. It says, early in the morning, as he was on the way back to the city, he was hungry. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he went up to it, but found nothing on it except leaves. Then he said to it, may you never bear fruit again. And immediately the tree withered. Upon first glance, this looks like a blood sugar issue to me. Jesus is human, and he's hungry. And he sees a tree that looks like it should have fruit on it, and it doesn't. And he curses it, and it dies. I love this story because I feel like it is such a picture of Jesus' humanity and his deity. And, we've all experienced this. I was reading this story, and I was thinking about, okay, I've taken my kids to school. I'm home. I threw the laundry in. It's 9:15. I'm starving. I go to the pantry. I pull out a box of cereal. I go to pour. There's nothing in it. Curse the box of cereal, right? We've all walked through this. And this is sort of, when I first read it, this is what I see Jesus doing. And it says the disciples watch it, and they're like, what in the world is happening right now? Jesus is making a huge statement here. Yes, he's hungry. Yes, he was hoping for figs. There were no figs. He curses the tree. But he's making a huge statement here. In some of the Gospels, this scene happens right before he clears the temple, and in some of them, it happens right after he clears the temple. So we know in his brain, he is angry about this idea of religiousness, right? Israel is real good at this. They're real good at looking like they have it all together, but inside, it's not so pretty. It wasn't the season for figs. There shouldn't have been figs on the tree. But because it wasn't the season of figs, it also wasn't the season for leaves. There should not have been leaves on the fig tree. It looked like it was bearing fruit. It had pretty leaves. So in some of the translations, you're reading it and you're like, why, if it wasn't fig season, why was he going and looking for figs there? Well, it shouldn't have had leaves either. He's mad about unfruitfulness. It makes him angry. Don't look like you're bearing fruit when you're not bearing fruit. He's making a statement about Israel, and I think he's making a statement to his people too. This is a time in history where it is really easy to show your pretty leaves. Okay, track with me here. Right? I can Instagram my quiet time. I can Instagram whatever. I can Facebook whatever, right? It's really, I don't think those things are bad, but I think it's really easy to say look at all my pretty green leaves. We can show people and have nothing happening here. We have no fruit going on. And I think we can think that because we have pretty leaves, we're doing okay. And Jesus is real clear in this interaction. He's not interested in your leaves. He's hungry and he wants fruit. Spurgeon says, fruit is what God wants. Our God has the right to expect fruit when he looks for it. This was oh man. But this is serious stuff. It's real easy for us to look like to have beautiful leaves. I mean, we actually have them. But when Jesus comes and looks for fruit, do we have anything to offer him? Okay, so he's frustrated about that. He's angry about it. So that was one scene that I was oh man. Okay, so let's look at another place. Let's go to Mark 9:33. No, that's not it. Hold on. Sorry, I have the wrong passage written down. Give me just a minute. No, Mark 9:33. That's right. Okay, so we'll set this stage a little bit. So Jesus and his disciples are walking into Capernaum, and they're arguing about essentially who Jesus likes the most, right? Who's going to sit at your right hand, and who's the greatest in the kingdom. And Jesus sits them down, and he says all these really pretty red letter phrases that we all want to paint on reclaimed wood and hang in our house. Okay, here we go. Ready? If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and the servant of all, right? We hear that and we're like, yes, Jesus, beautiful. He took a little child and had him stand among them. Taking them in his arms, he said, whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. We're good, right? Yes, Lord, yes, this is great. Okay, the teachers, John says, we saw a man driving out demons in your name, and we told him to stop because he was not one of us. And Jesus says, don't stop him. No one who does a miracle in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me, for whoever is against us is for us. I tell you the truth, anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name, because you belong to Christ, will certainly not lose his reward. Right? So he's holding this child, talking to the disciples, pretty things. Then he says this, and if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a large millstone tied around his neck. What? I don't want that painted and hanging in my dining room. What? He's mad about this. I love that Jesus is like an emotional person. I feel like I work this way a lot of times, like talking with people, and then all of a sudden it's like this something, you know? He is serious about this. Do not mess with children. You want to get mad about something? You want to get angry about something? How about this? If you're where I was at in the beginning, you've got anger, you want to funnel it to something, let's talk sex trafficking. Let's get angry about it. I think a lot of times when we think about children being hurt, we don't want to think about it because the emotions, like we have to then do something about it, right? I don't want to read the book, I don't want to read the blog, I don't want to watch the documentary, because then I like have this information and I have to like do something about it. So it's easier to be apathetic, right? And just be like, yeah, I got my own stuff, right? You want to be angry about something? Let's be angry about what Jesus is angry about, and he is angry about this. Do not mess with kids. Let's get angry about it. So that was another place Jesus gets angry that I was like, okay, Lord, I hear you. Okay, so the third place I want to look at is in John 2:12. And this is sort of the scene we all think of. If you think of Jesus being angry, you think of him clearing the temple, right? That's sort of, we see this real, like, rage come out of Jesus when he clears the temple. So let's read this scene, and then we'll kind of dissect it. Starting in verse 12, it says, "After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and brothers and his disciples, and there they stayed for a few days. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found men selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple area, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, 'Get these out of here. How dare you turn my Father's house into a market?' His disciples remembered that it was written, 'Zeal for your house will consume me.' And then the Jews demanded of him, 'What miraculous sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all of this?' And Jesus answered them, 'Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days.'" Okay. This is like anger. He is making a whip and chasing people. This is not, I think sometimes because of art and flannel boards and whatever, I think of Jesus as like this like white guy who kind of floats like 6 inches off the ground. He's maybe glowing all the time. And he's just sort of like, "I love everybody." You know, there's like this I don't know, image that I can conjure up of him that doesn't match up with this scene where he is mad. And this story was always told to me. I remember being like in junior high, and we wanted to do a fundraiser for camp, and we were going to do a bake sale, and people flipped their lid about us selling things inside the church. And it was like, well, don't you know this story about Jesus clearing the temple when they're, exchanging money? And no. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think what's happening here, here's what I think is happening here. They weren't in the temple selling things. They were in the temple courtyard. So they're out in front of the temple. The merchants and the vendors are there. The temple courtyard was reserved for the non-Jewish people to come and worship God. They couldn't go in the temple, but the courtyard was their designated place to worship, the Gentiles and the Greeks. And clearly, the leaders of the temple had said, "Oh, and by the way, merchants, feel free to take it over." So there probably wasn't a lot of space then for the Gentiles and the Greeks to come and worship. And this makes Jesus mad. He's not in the temple when he says, "How dare you turn my Father's house into a market?" He's in the courtyard. He understands his Father is not about these people and those people. He is the God of all people. And he's making a statement in there, clearing out that marketplace, saying, "Make room. Make room. It's not about you. Make room." And he's fulfilling prophecy. He's declaring himself as the Messiah as he does this. The disciples remember these prophecies about his zeal for his Father's house, and he talks about his death and resurrection. Take down this temple, I will rebuild it in 3 days. So this is like a significant scene, and I think it's really important for us to self-reflect on whether we do this. Again, I think it's really, really easy in our Christian culture to do this, to set ourselves up above other people for different reasons. In this scene, it's the Jews setting themselves up because they are the descendants of Abraham, right? Not the Greeks and not the Gentiles. But this is just sort of a list that I wrote down. Do we see ourselves as better than others? Charismatic versus not charismatic. Calvinistic versus Arminian. Saved from childhood versus recent convert. Saved versus unsaved. Working mom versus stay-at-home mom. Sister versus sister-in-law. Older woman to younger woman. Younger woman to older woman. In shape, out of shape. Do you recognize yourself, right? We do this. We have sort of a hierarchy that we put ourselves in our brain. Makes Jesus angry. Don't do it. I think these three things, okay, recap. Unfruitfulness. Looking like you've got fruit, not having fruit. Hurting children. Setting yourselves up, seeing yourselves as better than other people. 3 scenes in the New Testament. There's many others. Those are the 3 that popped out to me. Let's not be apathetic. Let's not. I feel like there's a call this morning. If there's apathy in your heart, let's get rid of it. If you're apathetic towards your sin, get rid of it. Let's repent and cry out and ask the Lord to change our hearts. To shine a spotlight on those places where we're pretending to be fruitful and we're not, and we know it. Where we're setting ourselves up above other people and we know it. Where we're apathetic to issues of social justice. We turn the channel, we don't want to read the blog, we don't want to see the documentary because we've got our own junk we're dealing with and I don't have time for that. That's not how Jesus handles this. Let's get angry about the things that make Jesus angry. Okay, so that's where I got. And I was like, okay, I can do that. Talk about anger. And then the Lord took me to these passages. I want to look at Jesus not getting angry. Okay, let's go to John 12. Okay, I'm going to tell my story first. I forgot to do that, and that's kind of an important part. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, when I was 13, my dad became a pastor. He went into full-time ministry. He had a private practice, marriage and family therapist in Bakersfield. He sold his practice and went to work as the pastor of family ministries at a church maybe 15 miles from our house. And the church, we weren't going to that church, so we started going to that church. That made sense. And they had a school there, and so I started attending a private Christian school there, started in 8th grade, and that church became our world. I was going to school there. I was going to Awana there. I was, on worship team there. Those people became our people. They were our tribe. That became my world. Junior high, high school, college. I would come back and intern for the church, got married in that church. Those are our people. And about 3.5 years ago, it was October, 3.5 years ago, my little Southern Baptist family had an encounter with the Spirit of God. And the Lord ushered us into a season of spiritual warfare that was intense and long and new. And it resulted in the deliverance and the freedom of my mom. And it was beautiful. And it was really hard. And it was really messy. And our tribe and our people decided it was too messy. And rather than say, whoa, this is outside of our box, but we want more, they began to draft emails about my family and send them out. Because they had to come up with something. There was one email that went out. I was down at my parents' house. It was a Friday. And an elder sent an email out to the other elders that had just really bad stuff in it about my family. That was not even kind of true. They were digging for something. So this email went out, and I was at my parents' house, and it came up on my dad's computer, and I remember my dad saying, I don't even want to read it. I don't even want to read it. And I was like, Miss Justice here. Well, I'm reading it. I'm printing it. And I called the church office, and I said, is the senior pastor still there? And they said, yes, he is. And they said, he's getting in his car. And I said, you tell him to wait. And I got in my car, and I drove to his office. And this man was my pastor. He married us. He was the administrator of my high school. He was my Bible teacher. He was my dad's best friend. This was my pastor. And I remember going into his office and slamming the email on his desk, saying, what are we going to do about this? They're lying, and you know it. What are we going to do about this? And I remember him giving me some BS answer and glazing over. And I remember thinking, he's not going to do anything. He's not going to do anything about this. And I remember going home and asking my dad, what are we going to do about this? And my mom and dad crying, saying, God is our defender, Amber. God is our defender. And it pissed me off so much because this was wrong and no one was going to do anything about it. My parents weren't going to do anything about it. My pastor wasn't going to do anything about it. And God was not doing anything about it. The bad guys were winning. And I got angry, and I agreed with it. And it took a deep root in my heart. And it felt like, at least I can be angry. And at least I can be angry. In the midst of this betrayal, at least I can be angry. You're not going to do anything. You're not going to do anything. God's not doing anything about it. At least I can be angry. And I let it go deep, and I agreed with it, and I said yes to it, and it took root in my heart. About 3 weeks later, they fired my dad. As much as a Baptist church can excommunicate people, that's what they did. And that was it. It's beautiful and it's wonderful, and there's so many good things about it, and I could sit and tell you the amazing things the Lord has done for my parents from that moment. But it is wrapped in my anger. I'm mad. I want to look at Jesus. Okay, so John 12. Here's some kind of background to this. So it's 6 days before Passover, and Jesus arrives at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here he's at dinner. They've done a dinner given in Jesus' honor. Martha's serving it, of course, right? Martha's serving it. It's okay. Lazarus is reclining at the table with Jesus, and Mary takes out a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume, and pours it on Jesus' feet and wipes his feet with her hair. And the house is filled with the fragrance of the perfume. This is the famous scene of adoration, right? Ultimate adoration. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It's worth a year's wages." He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. So we have, this scene of Judas, this scene of total adoration, and then Judas is there, right? It says he's going to betray Jesus. We know that he does. It says he's a thief. This is crazy, right? People would actually sell their own things in order to give money to the poor. This was radical. So he's like, hey, this is expensive perfume. We could have sold this to the poor, and I could have pocketed, a little bit. And Jesus says to him, "Leave her alone. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." In other Gospels, we see that it's about this time where Judas goes to the chief priests, and he makes the exchange. He says, "I'll give you Jesus, you give me," it's like 30 shekels of silver or something. Not a whole lot. So we have this betrayal is happening, right? Kind of the behind the scenes of this betrayal. If we go over to John 13. So here's the next time Jesus and Judas interact. It was just before the Passover feast, and Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and he was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash Judas's feet. He knows. And he washes his feet. There's like eye contact being made. This isn't like reputation betrayal, right? This isn't like you're saying things that are not true about me. This is like what you're doing is going to result in a horrific death. He knows it, and he washes his feet. Verse 11, it says, he knew who was going to betray him. He knew. He doesn't just wash his feet. Later on in the passage, he serves him dinner. And Judas knows. They have a full exchange where he says, "I tell you the truth, one of you is going to betray me." Leaning back against Jesus, Peter says, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus says, "It's the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." Then dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him, and Jesus said, "What you are about to do, do it quickly." When I hear that, I think at least he had to have been mad when he said that, right? Maybe there was something there. Right? I need him to get angry. I need him to get mad about the fact that he's about to be betrayed unto death, and he doesn't. And that makes me mad. Right? Ooh. Okay, so I read that line and I was like, okay, Jesus, at least maybe you were mad when you said some sense of anger. But the disciples hear him. It says the disciples heard him and they didn't understand what he was saying, and so they assumed he must have meant go and give some money to the poor. Well, then his tone probably wasn't one of anger if the disciples assume he means, go and give some money to the poor, right? Okay. So let's go to, John 13. Okay, Matthew 26:47. We're skipping around because this picture of this betrayal, this scene of betrayal is crazy. 26:27, is that right? 47, sorry, 26:47. Okay, Judas, one of the 12, arrives. They're in the garden with the disciples. He's just had this sort of pep talk with the disciples. he says, "Here comes my betrayer." Judas comes up with a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." This part, okay. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Punch him in the face. What does Jesus say to him? Friend. Ugh. Friend, do what you have come for. Do you sense anger? I'm not picking up anger. I've tried. Does that mean something else in Greek? Okay, so then Peter steps in, and I love Peter. This is how I would react. He takes out a sword, and he lobs off the guy's ear. Because someone needs to do something, right? Jesus isn't doing anything. I don't know what the other disciples are doing, so Peter's like, let's go. Let me tell you, as I was leaving that pastor's office, do not think I did not look at the side of his car and pull out my keys and want to just, right? Somebody do something. This is not okay. And this is what Peter's feeling, right? This is not okay. I'll do something. And I just can't imagine what he's feeling as Jesus, arms bound, bends over and picks up the man's ear and heals it. He doesn't scold Peter. He says, "Put away your sword. I'm not leading a rebellion." He asks the soldiers, "Why are you coming after me with swords?" I'm going to go willingly. He tells Peter, "I have to do this. I'm fulfilling it. This is why I came." And he walks away. He's led off to his death. He knew what Judas had done, and he washed his feet. He knew what Judas had done, and he poured him wine. He gave him bread. He let him kiss his face. Jesus knows betrayal. He knows what it's like to have your tribe run away. As he was being led off, his disciples ran away. Peter goes on to deny him 3 times. As I began to study Jesus in anger, I talked to God in my car. Connie caught me yesterday. She sent me a text. Who are you talking to? I talk in my car a lot. And my shower. Those tend to be I think they're the 2 places where it's somewhat quiet in my head. And so this is where God and I go at it, okay? So shower and car. It's where I cry. I bawl in the car. I'm sure I just can't imagine. And the shower. Janie told Tim the other day, the Lord has wrecked me over this the last couple weeks, you guys. This has been really hard. And Tim came home from work yesterday, and Janie says, "Mom was talking to Jesus and crying again." Yep. Sounds about right. So as I began studying Jesus in anger, I felt like this conversation started to come up. As the Lord started to kind of chip away, right? At but God, but this, but they did that, but they said this, right? This tends to be how the conversation plays in my mind. Or it goes to, if only I had said that. If only I had said this, If I could go back, I would do it this way. And you rehash it. I can go right back to those emotions. It's 3.5 years ago. I can go right back to that scene real quick. Because I said yes to the anger, and I let it take root in my heart. Because at least it was something. And I felt, in this conversation I started having with the Lord, the Lord was like, "All right, Amber," this is how we talk. "All right, Amber, if you were God, if you were me, what would you do? You think, you're mad because I didn't do anything. This is what you've decided. Okay. What would you do if you were me?" felt like, I don't know, God. I don't know. So this dialogue begins, and he's like, let's go after it. Let's go after it. And he revealed in my heart that as mad as I am at those men, as frustrated I was that my parents were like choosing to walk in righteousness, I was mad at God. I didn't feel like he came through. I felt like once I said that out loud, I'm mad at you, God, because you didn't do anything. So sweetly and so kindly, he said, babe, I did. I died for it. It's already paid for. There was something that shifted in my heart when he said that. I felt like this thorn of anger began to loosen. He didn't not do anything. He already did it. He died for it. I don't have to be angry. I don't have to hold on to it anymore because he already took care of it. He already paid for it. It's already covered. I'm so grateful. I just want to invite you guys. I don't know, maybe I don't know. I want to invite you to respond. If you've heard my story and my mess and feel like you identify with anything in there. Maybe you're angry about something, or you're angry at someone, or you're angry about a situation that happened. Maybe you're angry at God, and that feels like something you're not allowed to say out loud. You're not supposed to feel angry at God, right? I just want to invite you to come and just lay it out here. It's toxic stuff. In the last 3.5 years, I've seen it come out of me in places it shouldn't be coming out of me. I feel like I'm way more angry with my kids. I feel like I'm way more angry at things that happen to me, injustices that happen to me, personal offense. I feel like I can go from 0 to 60 real fast. And it doesn't feel like that characterized me before. Like that's a new something. It's a symptom of something. And I'm tired of it. I don't like this anymore. I don't want it anymore. So I'm going to ask the worship team to come up. And I'm going to be on my face. Because I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want the anger anymore. I don't want to be apathetic to the things that God gets angry about. I don't want to not care about those things because I'm too busy caring about stuff that he's already done. He's already dealt with it. I don't have to carry this anger anymore. He's covered it. I just want to declare over your lives, if there's places where anger has taken root, get it out. Get it out. He's paid for it. He's covered it. That thing your mother-in-law said to you, he's covered it. Don't hold on to it anymore. It's toxic. Your crappy childhood, he's covered it. Don't hold on to it anymore. It's toxic. Don't let the anger eat you. Don't let it eat you. Don't let it destroy you. Because he's covered it. He paid for it. Walk in freedom. Walk in freedom. He's come to bring us freedom. He's already brought it. I'm so thankful that he's laid out in the Gospels that we can look at Jesus and see, here's where he gets angry and here's where he doesn't. I want to be like Jesus so bad. So, Lord, I just say, I'm a mess, God. I'm sorry for believing you weren't trustworthy. I confess my sin of unbelief. Believing you didn't care. Father, I forgive my pastor. I forgive my dad. I release them to you. I don't hold anything over them, Lord. Thank you for the miracle you did in our family. Thank you for the deliverance you gave my mom. Lord, stir up righteous anger in me over the things that make you angry, God. I want to do something about those things, God. I don't want to be apathetic. I don't want to be passive. I don't want to just live my life in my little bubble, not caring about the people that you care about, Lord. Father, deliver me from this root of anger in my heart. Take it out, Lord. I just want to invite you guys to come. Prayer team will be up here if you want someone to pray with you, but I just invite you to come to the front and just deal with your stuff.
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find. Though I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And I